Alright, we're going to get started here in just 1 second. I'm compiling together people attending in the classroom in Discord today, so bear with me as there is nothing happening on this video right now. Okay, welcome back everybody. There's been a bit of a lull in our lessons as of lately. There's been a little craziness around here, so there hasn't been any class sessions for a few weeks. Um, but we're going to pick up right where we left off, which is working on this wonderful gun. So nothing has happened since I last did anything to it as far as our class sessions went. For those kind of hopping into this game a little late, this is a Soldier 76 gun from Overwatch by Blizzard, and it's been my replicated model so far. Now we've gone through a bit of practices through the high polygon and created this nice, wonderful object for ourselves in our big high poly layer. So if I isolate this, you'll see this is our gun in its high polygon state. Except this, what is that? That needs to go away. Get out of here. Um, this, so you'll notice it's still in our subdivided levels. So if I press 1, it goes back to a kind of semi-low poly state, and then 3 is in its smooth state. So everything in here right now is currently all smoothed out. Oh, there's another one. Get out of here. Oh, there's many duplicate layers there. I'll fix all that later. That happens. So we've been going through and we've been starting to address some of the low poly areas for this gun, which in my final LOPO layer, I can go ahead and just right click that layer and select objects. Then I can go over here and isolate selected so I can actually see currently what I have, what we've actually UV'd. So it looks like there's one piece in here that um, didn't get equated out with everything. So we'll make sure we'll touch on that. Um, so I'm actually going to open up my UV texture editor and I'll hop over to scene 2. You can see scene 2 right now. So if I have any of these selected, I'm going to turn my grid spacing off. Then I'm going to turn my blue transparency on. And actually, for the sake of you guys viewing this, I'm going to go ahead and go into image, and I'm going to uncheck display image. That's up there at the top. It's for some reason this stream system doesn't actually show you the drop downs when I select them. So again, that's image and display image. So now we have a non image background. We can see a little bit better. And this course is my 0 to 1 space we talked a little bit about. If you're creating a unique texture map, this is pretty much where you're going to be living, is in the 0 to 1 space. If you're creating repetitive or tiling objects, this space goes infinitely. So you actually have to UV accordingly. Sorry, my ear itched. So today, we're just going to go over a lot of repetitive stuff. Why? Because I kind of want to engrave some of the practices into your guys' minds. So it's going to be a lot of mindless, repetitive work here. But that's okay, because honestly, that's what modeling is sometimes. So we're just going to go down through here and select different objects. So I'm actually going to start off with this guy right here. But I'm going to delete you. So creating low poly shells is essentially about mimicking the high polygon state in the closest fashion that you can. So if I were to grab this and this and isolate select that, so I'm going to go ahead and look at this in my hidden line removal, which is up there towards the shaded view. Let me switch back for you guys. So in my scene file, I'm going to essentially try and replicate um, the high polygon object. Uh, sorry, yes, silent. It's I have a new machine. I'm not using it, but I did manage to mess with my fans a little bit so that you guys aren't getting as much feedback from the fans as there have been in previous lessons. Because I actually went back and listened a little bit, and I noticed that there is a quite a substantial amount of feedback. So I'm hoping that they stay relatively quiet for you guys, but we'll find out. Okay, so I have my low poly state, and then I have my high poly state, and I'm gonna take this back into its unsmoothed version. Now you'll notice that right now this object, like if I moved it and it's not 100% where it should be, that's fine. You can fix that really easily by lining it up accordingly. So if I can press insert on my keyboard, you'll see that your translate tool does this little transformation thing. It takes away the arrows and kind of just becomes a dot. And I'm going to go ahead and turn on my snap points up here. And I'm just going to snap this center point by dragging it and dragging it over the top of where I want it to go. And I'm going to press insert again. This actually changes the center pivot of your object so you can snap it to anything else that you want accordingly. So I'm going to go ahead and just drag this now over there. So I know, okay, there now it's lined up perfectly with its high polygon state. Some of the areas are not lined up, but that's because some of the states changed since last. So I'm going to go ahead and drag some of these verts here over. Let's just drag you here. Drag this guy over to this corner. You'll notice I am snapping everything, so I still have my snap verts on. Again, that's up here, and it's the one with the little ball, a little blue ball. Go ahead and snap that point there. Go ahead and snap this point here. Okay, so we've got a whole segment that is off from its. So this piece I saved before I transformed it into a high polygon piece. Now you'll notice that there are some major differences between the two. So I'm just going to take this whole segment and I'm going to drag it back. Now that it's closer, go ahead and just start snapping some of these verts back to where they're meant to be. Just going to line that up. You don't need to line that up, but I like straight lines. Now it looks pretty close to what's going on in the high polygon state, but for my mental sanity, when I'm baking out something, I just kind of like to make sure that it's as close as humanly possible. So I'm just grabbing these verts, and this is something that takes 10-15 seconds to do. Easy cleanup. So it looks like we've got everything on this object nice and lined up to its high polygon. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually just going to isolate select this now. You'll notice I've got a bunch of stray lines that I don't need. So I'm going to go ahead and just start getting rid of some of these by moving these over. So anything that doesn't create shape or silhouette is something that's unnecessary. So you'll notice this line kind of just goes down, and it's essentially just for this little bend here. but now we don't need anywhere else, so we're just getting rid of all the extraneous polys here. And that essentially is for creating as low poly of a shell as we can. And the best practice is to try and maintain quads. That's not always going to happen. That's okay. So like here, we don't need this, so I'm going to move these pieces over up here and up here. Move this guy over here. So you'll notice I'm creating triangles. That's fine. But it just, it takes away some of the polygons that we don't need. I'm going to go ahead and delete these faces because they're hidden and don't have a purpose. We've got these side verts here that don't have a purpose, so we're just going to move those over. Move those over. We've got these lines that don't have a purpose, so we're going to triangulate that out. Cool. So we've now got a low polygon state, and we're just going to go ahead and go up to our merge verts. Merge. Now you've got, so faces are 49 rather than 57. Is it a huge difference? No. Does it save polys? Yes. Obviously this is a small piece. When you're doing something like this on a far more complex piece, the game is a little different. So now that we've got this, I'm going to separate this out into chunks, and we're going to UV it. So I'm going to go ahead and select some of these faces. So I'm going to go ahead and select the part, this one right here. Let's go ahead and deselect out these triangles. I'm separating this out because there are two pieces. Like when you look at its actual construction, it looks like there are two pieces. So I'm going to start by UVing this one. I'm actually going to get rid of these faces. I'll add those on top later. Make sure we get rid of that and that. I'll fix that in the verts here in a second. So I'm going to go ahead and just create UVs. I'm going to create planar mapping. So what this did is in our UV editor has created just this simple overlay. Now if we were to go in and I'm going to go ahead and press Control right click to bring up my radial dial, which you can't see in the stream, and just go to my UVs. So it automatically selects the UVs that object, and I'll turn snapping off because it happens to destroy UVs. So so there's this piece, which obviously there's more geometry to it than what you're seeing in the 2D plane. So if I flip back into my scene here, I'm going to go ahead and assign this the checker material that we've been using. So when I create UVs on a planar scale, it projected from the top down, which the top looks great, but you've got these sides that are stretching. So we're going to go ahead and fix that. So I'm just going here, and I'm going to go into Polygons, Unfold. This brings up a little Unfold UV options window. Oh, you can see it already. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and just apply on the horizontal scale, and then I'm going to apply on the vertical scale. I tend to like just moving in horizontal and vertical. It allows me to see what I'm doing a little better. So you'll see as I'm applying these, the UV is changing in my UV space. Now it's bending a lot and causing some contortion. So I'm going to go into my scene and I'm just going to grab some of these edges. I'm going to go ahead and grab these outer edges. I try to stick to edges that are greater than 90 degrees, not less than 90 degrees, as to help some of the unfolding. So I'm going to go ahead and cut these ones. So I have these edges selected. I'm going to go back into my UV window here, my UV texture editor. I'm going to press this little scissor button up here, and this is actually going to cut open these edges so that they're not welded together in the UV space. So I'm going to go ahead and select some UVs, Control right click to shell. You can also bind this in your hotkeys. I have it bound to the little tilde mark next to the 1. it's really helpful to bind that key when you're UVing. So now I'm going to go ahead and start uh, bending or unfolding this again. Now you'll notice it's relaxing it a little better. So if you look at it from a top-down perspective, we're starting to get some of our straight lines back because it's not constraining to these corners anymore. So unfolding those are unwelding them kind of helped a little bit there. So we've got some of our UVs just a little off here. And you can go in if you really want them to be super straight. You have these align buttons up here, align left, right, down, and up. So if I were just to click them, it's essentially just straightening out my lines for me. I'm pressing G to repeat that command, by the way. I'm pressing, and then there's going up. So I'm just straightening out some of them. Now we've got one little contorted area still over here, and it's a little stretch. We'll see if we can edit that. But for the most part, we've got nice solid straight lines for these boxes. Let's go back into our scene here. Let's see if moving this accordingly will work. Go ahead and merge these down. Merge these guys down. No, merge these up. I'm going to unfold this again in the horizontal. It's fine that these lines aren't straight. I don't need them to be straight. So if we go back into our scene here, it looks like everything in here is nice and squared off. You see why using this checkered image is very helpful for your UV space. It allows you to see how your textures are going to be applied on there. So you're not getting any weird warping or anything. So I'm going to go ahead and select these faces. Actually, you know what? Before I do that, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to go back in this object and I'm going to get this unnecessary vert out of here on both sides. Go ahead and select these faces. Just create UV planar mapping. Do that again over here. So now we've got both of those. Press Q to go on my selection. Now we've got both of these guys. Oh, see, that's what happens when you turn on snapping. It destroys them. I'm going to move these out here. And I'm just going to unfold them on the vertical scale. Yeah, nothing happens when you unfold them on the horizontal scale because they're already there. It's like one chunk, so you're fine. Go ahead and move this over here. Obviously, right now they're severely larger than the other one. That's fine. We'll fix that in just a moment. Go back into the scene here, and let's grab this last remaining area, and we'll just go ahead and create planar mapping again. Now this one came in a little distorted, so I'm going to redo that. Right now I have it on best plane, which is kind of guessing how it wants to project its UV space. Now I wanted to do a fixed one, so I'm just going to click bounding box. Now you'll see that's what Z does, that's what Y does, and that's what X does. We of course in this situation want Y, which is directly fixing that. So when we go back into our UV space, we've got this piece here. We're going to go ahead and unfold this vertically, and it just automatically unfolds that. So now we've got a nice straight piece here, and that's relatively easy. So we've got UVs that are very oddly spaced out, so we're just going to go ahead and go up, select all the UVs, go down, and we're just going to click Layout under the Polygons tab. And this should unify. Well, apparently it does not want to unify. Why are you not unifying? 1 second. I'm not sure why it's not unifying the UVs, but that's fine. We actually can just do that ourselves. So I'm going to go ahead and shrink these down. And these actually are going to go over here, so I'm going to shrink them down to the corresponding areas. So if I were to, let's say, line this up, it's going to line up to that individual spot right here. I'm trying to get used to using this UV editor. I actually have a separate UV editor that I use, but since it's a mod, I'm trying to teach through the original UV editor. So I'm going to go ahead and select both these edges now, and I'm gonna weld them. I'm going to move this back and align that over there. So now that piece is actually glued into that spot. Go ahead and shrink this one down till it's about that size. And then I'm going to go ahead and weld that edges. It's right here, right below the cut that we used. So selected edges are UVs together, and that just go ahead and binds them together. And then I'm just realigning the edges accordingly. So now that's all in one nice even space. So I'm going to go ahead and shrink this guy down. So you'll see as I'm shrinking and matching him, I'm actually using the checker boxes to line this and see how we're doing on resolution. So it's just a little skosh. And now it's basically the same resolution as the other piece without actually having to use any tools. So we're just kind of eyeballing it there. And that's us unfolding another piece in, making sure it's fully poly optimized. So we've got that. And now we're going to go on to a cylindrical object. So we've got this guy over here. Now this thing has already been subdivided, and that is essentially because I booleaned some of these edges out. So obviously we can't just duplicate this thing out and reuse it. We could, it's just a lot of edge selection. Sometimes I'll still do it over the other route just to make it a bit more precise. But for the sake of this, we're actually just going to create a cylindrical object. So I'm gonna, for some reason that's attached to that. I don't know why. That's weird. That's fine. So I'm gonna go ahead and create a cylinder. In my low polygon state, I think that for an object like this, a 20-sided cylinder is fine, or maybe like something like a 16-sided. If you want super low poly, obviously drop it down further. You know, it doesn't matter. For the sake of what we're doing here, we're just going to keep it a little higher. And I'm going to go ahead and line this up. So I'm going to snap my center pivot over onto this edge here. go ahead and look at. Alright, so I've got that. And now I'm just going to go ahead and snap it. Or I'm going to try and snap it to this. Sometimes it doesn't like doing it. Okay, so now we're at perfect center, right? So I'm going to shrink this down to where it is here. Now, when you bake things that are cylindrical, you'll notice that so these edges are popping out right now because obviously without the exact amount of subdivisions, you're not going to line up perfectly. So sometimes it's better to work to bake it out when it's just below the surface level of the cylinder. So in this case, when it's, you've got like this, and then small edits like that can be fixed really easily in the normal mapping editor in Photoshop. But we're just going to go ahead and take this, actually for the sake of reproing it, we're going to keep it just above the edge, just to marking it's a little easier. And I'm going to go ahead and just drag this edge all the way out to mimic this guy right here. So I'm going to isolate select these two. So the first thing I'm going to kind of start to do is mimic some of the geometry in here. So if I want, I'm going to take this, scale this out to where we're close to this edge. Got that edge there. Actually, wait, before I do that, I want to define this area. Go into my transparency so I can actually just subdivide out and add these rings in around this area. So I'm going to go ahead and add that ring there. Just going to go ahead and add that ring there. Let's select both of these now. And I'm just going to scale them without the y-axis. So I'm going to press Control on that y-axis. So I'm just scaling here. So now we've got that shape. We're starting to get our high polygon state mimicked in our low polygon state. Just go ahead and snap this over here. Do this again to this side. Go back into my wireframe mode. I'm going to put an edge here. I'm going to put an edge here. And this time I'm actually just going to do this by faces. So I'm going to select that first face and I'm going to hold Shift and double click the next one down on that ring. And now I've actually selected that whole ring, or you can just do that, one or the other. So now I'm going to, again, pressing Control on that Y scale. I'm just going to move this out to here. Going to snap this to this edge. Go ahead and snap this guy over to this edge. Now, of course, you can see in this area we're sticking out substantially more. You could go in and add another ring so that you're following that bevel edge a little bit more, but we're going to stick to being a bit more low poly here. So we're just going to go ahead and leave that, and that's going to bake that in. So now we've got, go ahead and delete. Now, well, we've got kind of a curve going on here. So I'm going to move that edge here. Just go ahead and shrink it down. It's a bit closer in there. Grab my verts here. shrink this down to this area. And actually, you know what, we really don't need this ring. So I'm going to select, double click that whole ring. Just going to get rid of it. Didn't need it. I'm going to shrink this down just a little bit so it's a bit more. Fine, don't work. Yeah, it's fine. Okay, so I'm going to select these faces here. I'm going to extrude them in so I can get this inset we've got going on in here. Press G to do that again. Now this is kind of one of those personal decisions. Do you want to keep this level of geometry in there, or do you want to bake it in there? This, I think for the sake of us keeping it low polygon, I'm actually going to take away this inset. But now, this is how you mimic an inset like that pretty easily. Just extrude it inward. So we're just going to go ahead and undo all of that. So that's no longer there. And I'm going to take my verts. I'm going to move them out here. Now this piece, it's a pretty substantial bump over the other, but I'm actually not going to do that. I'm actually just going to curve it where it starts curving here. Go ahead and shrink these verts down. Now the reason I'm doing that is because we're still going to get that information in the normal map. This little kind of extrusion up here, we're still going to get that bend around that edge. And again, now this face is more front facing, so I'm actually going to go ahead and extrude this back to here. So we've gotten this pretty well mimicked, right? Pretty easy. Is it perfect? No. But a lot of these areas that you're seeing detail being a little away from are going to be carried in through the normal. Really don't understand why you can't. There we go. Now we have this piece here, and I'm going to go ahead and redo its center pivot back to its origin. And you can scale it in on the Y without the Y so that you're actually more inside the body. Now some pieces are going to misalign like that if you have insets, but this will kind of help baking in some circumstances. We're going to leave it like this because I'm actually going to show you how to fix that in baking terms later on. But I'm going to go ahead and isolate select this, take off its hidden line removal. Right now, the edges are kind of funny. So we're just going to fix these normals. So anywhere I have hard edges, like these inset areas here, I'm going to go ahead and go into normals and harden edge. I'm going to do it to these spots. Should give us now a little bit cleaner of a bake in some of those areas with those hard normals. But actually, I'm actually going to soften that one. I don't want that one to be a hard normal. Okay. And then you'll see in here we've got some harder normals. So we're just going to go back in, press up on the arrow key, and that's going to select that whole ring for us. I'm just going to go ahead and soften those down. Alright. So we've got this low polygon state. It's a little high, 260 for a cylindrical. Um, Now, if it ever came down to it when we bake things out, we can always cut this in half by deleting every other edge loop in here. So if we were to just take those out, we're getting the same silhouette, from afar. But of course we get, a bit more harder geometry around it. But we're going to keep those edges in there for baking, and those can always be removed later as long as you're not deleting your seam line. So I'm going to select all the faces actually. Now, let's see. Go ahead and select all these faces. Select those faces. Go ahead and select a ring around here. Oops. I'll get rid of that edge because that's completely unnecessary. Oops, missing a couple here. So we're not going to planar map this one because that's ridiculous. We're going to go ahead and cylindrical map this. We're just going to go ahead and project that on. And right now it's facing a little off. So this is what you're getting in your UV space, which obviously that's not correct. So we're going to manually move this. We're going to click this little red cross here, and that's going to bring up the translate tool and this little circle. We're going to click that circle, and it's going to bring up our rotate tool. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to rotate. I'm actually going to put on my discrete rotates, and my step size is 15. So I'm snapping this now. It's perfectly 90. Good. So we've moved this to match the cylinder. Now you'll see in your UV space we've got a nice gridded off piece, right? Now you'll notice one box over here is away from this other box, and I can actually just go ahead and take off discrete rotate, and I'm just going to shuffle that just ever so slightly to the right, and now that box is actually lined up over there. So I'm going to go ahead and grab these UVs, and I'm going to move them over. Yep, taking off snap because that's what it does. And then these other faces. Oh, you know what? Before I do that, I'm actually just going to get rid of this edge here. Nope, nope. I will not get rid of that edge there. I'll leave it in for now. I'll delete it later. So I'm going to grab all of these remaining faces, except for these faces. So I have these faces now. And just create a planar mapping off that one. Of course, it's still stuck on bounding box, which we don't want. So we're going to hit planar mapping. Just switch back over to best plane. And there we go. And then I'm just going to unfold this. And we've got this other face here. Cool. Alright. So let's go back and check to see what it looks like when we assign it our checker material. And outer edge looks nice. We're going to go ahead and vertically fix that though. Just went in and did some vertical unfold. Now if you did this horizontally, it's going to change it up a little bit. That's fine. It's going to curve. The more you do this, the more it's going to start to curve like that. Now you can do that, that's fine. If you want to keep things straight, that's also fine. It's one of those minor shifts. It helps sometimes to keep it straight. If you're maybe creating individual lines on it yourself, like via texture. For our sake, I think we're fine with a curved state like this, where it's a bit more relaxed in the UV space. I'm going to take this, and I'm just going to shrink that down until we've got. Now, I'm actually going to take these here. Actually, you know what? Let's just take that whole segment. I'm actually selecting this inside face here, and I'm just going to go ahead and cylindrical map these because I don't like that. Where's my selection tool? Where are you? I don't see you. I hate when it does this. There it is. Sometimes it's a little hard to see the ring. And we're just shuffling that around until we've got a nice piece here. Now I'm going to flip this. If it's red, that means you have inverted normals from what you're facing. So I'm going to go ahead and just unfold that vertically. I've got a nice piece there. I'm going to take this over here, shrink it down to that size. And then we're just going to take this guy right here, shrink him up to equal size, and we'll match it with this guy. There we go. So now you see your cylindrical piece is all nice and UV. It's all squared off, and it's matching everything. Boom. Don't forget, I'm going to actually add both of these into my final LOPO layer. When I say LOPO, it's my short term for a low polygon. I don't know where I got that from. I'm weird, maybe. My friends think that I'm weird, so whatever. That's fine. Now I've got these two pieces. I'm actually going to go ahead and select all of these objects. Just go ahead and isolate them. Now, of course, in my UV space, we've got a bunch of overlapping things. Oh, apparently this did not have UVs. We're going to fix that right quick. That should be pretty easy. Go ahead and just select these faces. No? Yeah? No? Okay, there we go. Go ahead and select these faces. Just create UVs. Let's unfold it vertically. Let's fold it horizontally. Okay, so we've got that. Okay. So notice I was unfolding this, however, in Maya, The UVs actually weren't fixing themselves. Occasionally this happens. Sometimes UV channels get duplicated. So I'm going to go back in. If you ever see this where you're unfolding a piece in the UV editing space, where you've got a nice even flow here, and then you don't notice it here in your Maya space, it's usually because of duplicated UV channels. So I'm going to go up here into UV sets, and I have two channels here on this object. Normally you should only have map 1. So if I were to look at this low polygon object, I should only have, no, do have multiple channels. That's not good. I need to fix that, and I will fix that. So if that's the case, you always should be in UV channel 1. This is where we're UVing. So if I go back over to this smaller object, go down into UV sets, I'm actually going to check UV channel 1. Boom, there's my problem, right? These are the UVs that it's corresponding to in the viewport. Now this is the UVs we don't want. So we can go into UV sets in map 1 and we can actually just go ahead and select all of these UVs and under polygons copy UVs to UV set in channel 1. Now you see in Maya, boom, UVs are fixed. So if that happens to you, that's why. And that's a very simple fix. Actually, let's go ahead and add these guys onto. No, we're not going to be able to do that. It's not going to fit in there. That's fine. Go ahead and select out these pieces. Just going to create UVs for these. Easy enough. I'm just going to go ahead and shrink these down. Let's go ahead and look in the viewport here. It's responding a little weirdly right now to my unfolding, which is mainly because these pieces go in so much. But it's a small enough area that I'm actually not too worried about it. Create the UVs here. Go back into my UV space for you guys. I don't know if I can add those into that area here without overlapping. Yeah, so I can't. Let's actually unfold this really quick. So part of the problem is that can't go there because that's where it's supposed to sew onto. So I either have to cut this off or I leave these somewhere else, which I'm more fine with moving these pieces because they're a bit more hidden rather than this kind of like more exterior showing face here. I'd rather not have a cut line there. Right there is actually not as bad because you're really not going to see that as opposed to the more predominant area here. Go back into my UV space. What are you doing? You know what? I think I am actually just going to connect that. I'm going to back actually over in here, and I'm actually just going to give a geometry line there. I just created one right there so that I can cut in my UV space and see if that fixes that area up just a little bit. Let's take snapping off. Actually now, so now I can copy this piece over here. Now I can sew that together. Alright. So now that whole thing is a bit more straight in here. Go back over to these. Now this piece is starting to unfold a little bit nicer for us, which is good. It looks like we may be able to just bond those edges together since it's fitting close enough. Alright, now it's UV. That was actually a little more strenuous than I thought it would be. Let's go back into my low polygon here. Go ahead and select all these objects. And I'm just going to visually scale some of these UVs in here. So I'm grabbing these ones right now and shrinking them around just so that I get a little bit better closer proximity in my UV scale to each other. And again, just kind of eyeballing these right now. There's a way to do that more efficiently a little later. So these guys aren't UV'd either. I'll just go ahead and create planar mapping for both of them. Actually, you know, first we will let's combine them first. Alright, and then planar map that. Make sure they don't have faces under the sides of them, which they don't. Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and grab these edges around the sides. This is a really easy way to unfold boxes, so just grab the 4 edges and around it. Go back in here and we can just go ahead and cut those now. And now I'm just going to unfold them vertically and unfold them horizontally, which it did not undo all of them. So let's go ahead and cut that again. Huh. Apparently Maya's not wanting to cooperate with me. Oh, we've got, that's why. So if you look at the UVs, we've got a stray vert there. So I'm going to go back in here. Um, and just go ahead and delete out this vertex so it's not there anymore. Now I should be able to go back into my UV space, cut that apart. There we go. There's a quick, easy way to unfold boxes. So I'll go back into our scene file, and we'll grab the UVs of those two little doohickeys, and we'll just stretch them up a little bit. Now they're still showing up a little wavy, so I'm going to go back into my scene here. Straighten out these edges. Now you'll notice I've actually still got a couple of stray verts here. Easy to delete that out. Just go ahead and line up some of these lines so they're a bit more straight, so we're not getting that wave in our UV space. Boom. Now they're nice and straight. I keep trying to drag in the stream window, like I'm somehow gonna mess with the viewport in there. It's throwing off my groove. Okay. So we've got those guys. I'm gonna line up this as best as I can for right now. So that we're a bit closer. That looks close. Yeah, that's good. So I've got this guy over here too. I could have swore we UV'd him. Nope, didn't UV him. Let's go and do that real quick. Let's go back into scene 1 here. Just gonna go ahead and select that and planar map those edges. Planar map those edges. All right. So we're going to keep going through this process more in the next lesson. But I wanted you guys to get a few more, just kind of a little bit more time engraving some of the practices of low polygon modeling and UVing in here. And this is all stuff we'll continually go over. We'll optimize more. We'll fix edges, fix problems, and continue on down the road until we have this full gun low polyed out and ready to go. So thank you guys for staying tuned. A couple of minor problems today, but nothing we couldn't fix. I look forward to teaching more. Thank you everyone, and have a nice day.